Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Sean from SGT Report, and on the line is our good friend and longtime friend, Bix Weir from Road to Ruta. Bix, how are you?
I'm doing well, Sean. How you hanging in there?
Well, I'm weathering the storm, and I hope everybody listening is also weathering the storm. We need to keep our spirits in check, but we also need to keep our perspective. And that's why we wanted to get you on to talk about Alan Greenspan, right? You've been saying for a long time, he's one of the good guys, and people thought you were nuts, Bix. Frankly, according to David Icke, the man's a Satanist. It's hard to know what to believe anymore, but you were right about one thing. People are shocked to hear what he's admitting now.
Gold serves a very important place in monetary reserve. And the question is, why?
Before we get to that, let's talk about this latest epic criminality that we're seeing. I think on Thursday, according to Zero Hedge, millions of paper ounces, thousands of future contracts in gold were sold into the market. And we saw even worse madness on Friday. I think at one point on Friday, silver went below $16 an ounce. What do you make of all this, Bix? It's shocking to me that we're back in the mid-teens.
Well, it's really interesting because people are finally waking up to understand that gold and silver are manipulated. The problem is they still can't get past that price thing. They look at the price and they think, oh my goodness, the cabal is beating up gold and silver and they're selling paper contracts, which is true. But everybody needs to remember this has been going on since the 70s. The computer manipulation of gold and silver. There's nothing new going on now than what wasn't going on before. It's more obvious because we know we have more information on gold and silver. We know the dynamics of the investment are sound, and yet we see the prices dropping, even though every other metric is going crazy off the charts that says buy gold and silver. The only thing that is different, the only thing that is shaking people's nerves is this price manipulation, which happens on the COMEX and the LBMA, and literally there is no limit to the amount of paper ounces that can be sold. They're not even paper, really. They're electronic sell orders. And there is no limit. If you have the regulators in your pocket and you control the 99% of every trade is these banks trading back and forth to each other, there's no limit on where they could put the price. I've always said they could put it at $0 an ounce or $1 million an ounce with a click of a mouse.
Yeah, you have always said that. And boy, if you take a look at the end of the silver fix, Bix, I haven't done the math specifically, but we're down, I think, close to 25%, maybe slightly more, since the silver fix ended. And you and I both know that they just rolled out an electronic silver fix. It's the same bad guys in charge. Nothing changed, just a new gatekeeper.
It's true. There's absolutely no difference. It's still, three or four people taking orders from their bosses as to where to set the price that current day. It's got nothing to do with physical ounces being transferred like the LBMA claims. They claim over 100 billion ounces are transferred every year in silver. That number is just absolutely ridiculous. So it really, you look at this and you say, what can you believe anymore? You can't believe the COMEX. You can't believe the LBMA. You possibly can believe the futures contracts in silver, coming out of Shanghai, out of the warehouses. But those are all disappearing. It's insanity, but that's the key. You need to kind of break yourself away from watching the price of silver and say that's not real. That is the illusion, and you need physical silver in your own hand.
Yeah, that's right. And, when you talk about the illusion and what can we believe, what can't we believe, Nicholas Larkin from Bloomberg, and I made a big deal out of this when he said it, when he wrote it twice in 2 weeks, he was referring to, and he has been referring to, the silver market as a $5 trillion annual market. That's insane. And that was when silver was 20 bucks an ounce. That'll tell you alone, folks, how much paper nonsense is in the system. And I just want to recount that we've talked about all this criminality, Bix. You and I have talked in detail with our interview, The Shocking Truth, the History Channel won't tell you. And I think that's been seen by roughly 200,000 people at this point. And it needs to be seen by 200 million people. It needs to be seen by anybody with assets in this criminal system, be they assets in your brokerage account, your Wall Street assets, your 401k, your IRA. Anything in this system is at risk because of the DTCC and the criminality. Seed and Company. If you guys want to know the horrifying truth, take a look at that interview that Bix and I did. There's so much paper in the market now. It should be no surprise to anyone that silver is at $15 an ounce. What should come as a surprise, though, to everybody is that you can still get physical silver, you can get physical gold. At what point, Bix, won't you be able to? Because it's got to be getting close. It's got to be getting close. I mean, if they were giving away iPhones right now at artificially low prices at $15, $20, do you think there'd be very many iPhones left for very darn long?
No, not at all. And the reality is there's such a tiny percentage of people who actually go out and buy physical silver and take it home with them. And it truly is remarkable that no matter how much information we put out there, and no matter how much coverage it gets on the internet, people still have a hard time going out to their local coin store and buying an ounce of silver and bringing it home. That's just a reality of today's market. It's much easier to buy a silver ETF and put $1,000 or $10,000 into that. But people have to remember, this whole concept of virtual assets began in the late 60s and early 70s with the advent of computer programs. Before then, there was no such thing as this virtual asset that we know of today. The virtual assets are in stocks, in bonds, in the US dollar, in gold and silver. These are all virtual assets, virtual IOUs that are controlled by a very small handful of very big players who run these computer programs against each other, steering the price wherever they want it to go on a given day. And that's what you need to get your head around, is that the difference between what is real, something you can hold in your hand, or something you have identifiable proof is yours, and something that is fake. It is traded thousands of times every day, such as stocks on the stock market with the high frequency trades. Who knows? And you don't need to know, because these trades are very rarely ever cleared, as in money transferred, certificates exchanged. It's all in the virtual world, and as soon as that bell rings and everybody looks to find their assets, no one's gonna have clear title to anything, because everybody owns everything right now.
Okay, Bix, I started the interview by mentioning Alan Greenspan. For a long time, you've called him one of the good guys. People thought you were nuts, and now this man is talking about gold. Gold as money. Gold as a valuable asset. I also want to give people perspective. So let's recap from our friend Chris Duane's latest video, Scary Silver, which he just put out at the end of last week. And I just want to borrow this list from Chris and share it with everybody before we talk about Alan Greenspan, because the cartel is pulling out all of the stops. Despite record demand for silver in October from the U.S. Mint, which with 3 days left had already sold 4.3 million ounces. Bix, jump in at any time if you have anything to say about any of these figures. Indian gold imports surged over 450% in September alone, while Russia purchased 37 tons of gold in September alone, its biggest purchase ever. And meanwhile, China has acquired 68.4 tons of gold in 1 week alone just recently, and imported more than 2,000 tons of gold last year through the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Meanwhile, on November 30th, we have the Swiss gold referendum coming up, which may require the Swiss National Bank to reback its assets with 20% gold, having to make a 1,500-ton gold purchase. JP Morgan has also lost 33% of their stored gold reserves in 1 day out of their gold vault. And maybe the biggest, most important news to us silverbugs is the Shanghai Futures Exchange has lost over 1,000 tons of physical silver in 1 year alone, and is nearly empty. And last but not least, Keith Neumeyer, the CEO of First Majestic Silver, is withholding 1 million ounces of production of silver from sales as he waits for higher, fairer prices for this rare and precious metal. And that leads us to the last thing on the list, Bix. Alan Greenspan, now admitting that gold is important. It is money. Tell us about Alan Greenspan, my friend, because you are one of the few, maybe the only person I know on planet Earth, who cares about freedom, who cares about liberty, who cares about honest money, and who has been telling us that Alan Greenspan is actually one of the good guys who's working to take this criminal system down.
I don't know, is Ben Steele in the audience?
Yes.
There he is, okay. Before you read my book, go read Ben's book. The reason is you'll find it fascinating on exactly this issue, because here you had the ultimate test at the Mount Washington Hotel in 1944 of the real intellectual debate between the those who wanted an international fiat currency, which was embodied in John Maynard Keynes' construct of a bancor, and he was there in 1944, holding forth with all of his prestige, but couldn't counter the fact that the United States dollar was convertible into gold, and that was the major draw. Everyone wanted America's gold, and I think that Ben really described that in extraordinarily useful terms as far as I can see. Anyway, thank you.
Right. Well, I'm sure with comments like that, that will be turning you into a rock star amongst the gold bug community.
Truthfully, it shocked me more than it shocked any of my gold bug friends when I came to this conclusion in 2007. And really what it has to do with is, yes, Greenspan destroyed the system. The question is, did he intend to destroy it, and for what purpose? Now, if you go back, Greenspan back in the 60s, everybody knows Greenspan was a huge gold bug back in the 60s. He wrote the paper, Gold and Economic Freedom. Everybody was shocked in 1987 when he was appointed the head of the Fed because he was a gold bug. But you got to go back to the early 60s when him and his buddy John Kemeny, which is another brilliant guy, it's a whole nother story, but in the 60s, they invented the first shareable computer programs. It was called BASIC. And, if anybody who's taken computer programming knows that term BASIC. It was a very simple way to program computers, and Alan Greenspan and John Kemeny were the guys who invented it. Going forward, Alan Greenspan was, his mentor was the Fed Chairman, Arthur Burns. Arthur Burns wanted to go back onto a gold standard. There's a very important paper written in the 60s called On the Road to the Golden Age. And in that paper, it said, if you want to go back to a gold-backed system, the best way to do that financially for a country is to run the system as hard and as long as possible, soaking up all the benefits of fiat money, and then crash it somewhere down the line. That is exactly what Greenspan has been doing with computer programs he implemented in the 70s through as when he was the chairman of the economic advisors for Gerald Ford, all the way through even the 1981 Gold Commission report. And I'll quote this. It said, the majority of us at this time, this is in 1981, the majority of us at this time favor essentially no change in the present role of gold. If reasonable price stability and confidence in our currency are not restored in the years ahead, we believe that those who advocate an immediate return to gold will grow in numbers and political influence. You have a conclusion like that from the Gold Commission, which is a year-long, huge thing back in 81, and the conclusion is, we're not going to change anything right now, but unless we get our budgets under control, we're going to have to go back to gold. What have they been doing since 1981? Spending. Star Wars and all the Greenspan money printing, the easy money, QE1, 2, 3, 4. There's the QEB, which is what I call Belgium's purchase of U.S. treasuries. And now it's the QEJ, the Japan announcing today that they're going to start buying, I think, 10 to 20 billion worth of treasuries every month. This is all part of the same plan. Destroy the dollar. Get to that point where there's just so many out there, you can crash the system and go back to a gold standard. That's what Greenspan's been doing the whole time. That was his main purpose. And once he got out of the Fed, all he's been talking about is, hey, things are not good. Let's go back to a gold standard. This is a huge, huge program. And I didn't just make this stuff up. This all came from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston publications. And it's all written there. You just got to analyze them a little bit. If you go to my website, it'll show you exactly what they're talking about, how Greenspan and Arthur Burns had a plan to take down these big bankers.
Let me ask you this. Before we talk about QE, which the Fed is saying has ended, which is ludicrous, Peter Schiff, Andy Hoffman, and so many others have been saying it's impossible for them to stop at this point. The easy money, the minute it goes away, the economy will collapse, the stock market will collapse.
It hasn't stopped. Yeah, they're right. QEJ was announced. Japan said they're going to buy 10 to 20 billion in U.S. treasuries.
Okay, so Japan by proxy will be propping up the U.S. economy, and I think Japan has been a warrant of the United States government for a very long time, probably since World War II.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I think what's going on here is that Japan has been threatened into submission.
I don't think it's really threatened. I think it's just part of the plan. QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, QEB, which is Belgium buying 200 billion, QE3, this is QEJ, then they'll go to QE4, and it's all the same thing. They're all colluding together to keep this system going as long as possible.
Well, let me ask you this, Bix. What I found curious this week was the timing of having Alan Greenspan speak about gold, largely, and about the failure of QE in front of the Council on Foreign Relations. They put that conversation out on their YouTube channel for the world to see. And what I think is fascinating about that is that the Council on Foreign Relations was formed by David Rockefeller, was founded by David Rockefeller. David Rockefeller and the Rothschilds and these other banking families are joined at the hip in the foundation of central banks around the planet, certainly the Federal Reserve in this nation in 1913. It's really crazy timing to see all of this happening and to have them invite on their most famous central banker to talk about gold and the failure of QE at the Council on Foreign Relations. It's stunning.
It's not a mistake.
And it's not a mistake. Well, so flush that out for us. Is David Rockefeller ready to give this thing up too and go back to gold?
Well, it's a little deeper than that. I do believe Greenspan is very much involved with the ongoing manipulation of the markets. All along, these guys were working kind of for the good guys. But the problem was they had to use the banks, and the banks would piggyback off the trades. So the bankers got more and more power and kind of took over power when Bush took over. So a lot of this has been done clandestine in the background of the computers in the Fed, New York, and in the basement of the U.S. Treasury. There's a huge computer trading floor of people who rig markets every day. The Greenspan's latest comments, and it wasn't just at the CFR, he also talked about very positively about gold at the New Orleans Investment Conference. All part of the plan. They wanted to get as many of the money people into gold quickly. Now they're slamming it. That was part of the plan. The good guys don't want anybody to benefit off the end of this system, but it's impossible. You're going to have people who benefit from the destruction of a fiat currency by holding physical gold and silver. What they're trying to do now is get people in and then scare them away. That's what they've been doing, for the last since the big takedown in 2007 started. It really started with Bear Stearns, and when Bear Stearns had the largest gold short, and when they went down, J.P. Morgan had to take it over. Who has it now? I don't think J.P. Morgan has it anymore. I think it is more along the lines of some of the hedge funds. BlackRock, for instance, is very big in the gold stocks and the ETFs and things like that. So I imagine it went there because the regulators don't have as much power over them. Did Greenspan do this latest, pro-gold thing to get people in and then slam it to scare them out? Probably. But it also tells us we're getting closer and closer to the very end of this game.
Okay,
and you got to be in physical.
Okay, I got to go back, though, because I get confused about this good guys versus bad guys thing. You said that having Alan Greenspan on at the CFR is all by design. I find it all confusing because I just want to be real clear. David Rockefeller is at the very tippy top of the world's bad guys in my book. David Rockefeller, the Rothschilds, Kissinger, Zygmunt Brzezinski. There's a whole cabal of people that I think have dedicated their lives to enslaving humanity, to fiat, to pharmaceuticals, to vaccines, and to an entire program that has been rolled out over decades. So let's just be real clear about this. Greenspan's a good guy in your mind. Let's be real clear. You're not saying Rockefeller and the CFR are good guys.
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, this is a good sign that they are being taken down. There's a lot of rumors that the bad guys have been told stand down or else, and their money is being siphoned out of them, and there are many signs that this is true, that they are losing power. Although, still every day it seems to, if you live in America, it seems all our freedoms are going away. That's true to one extent, and it's very different. It's a very different way to look at things when you say, are all these things that are being thrust upon us done to teach us a lesson? Do they try to take our guns because they want to arm the masses? Because obviously there's no gun laws going into effect. Every time there's one of these fake shootings and and they try to take the guns, so they say, people go out and buy more ammunition, buy more guns, and all it's done is really arm the public. It's kind of one of those things. We tell people their liberties are going away to try to wake them up so that when it is time for America to stand up, the next banking crash, people will stand up and say, okay, we've had enough. We've learned a lot over these past 10 years. We're gonna take our monetary system back. We're gonna take our freedom back. We're gonna go back to the Constitution. We've talked about this a few times. People are still learning. They're not very smart, and it takes more and more time. Unfortunately, I see this going on for a few months more before the big end comes, the big end game. Now, I do think it's the final gold and silver slam, and at some point it'll start to move up. But there will be a time for the United States to stand up, the people of the United States, and say no more. And I think that time comes when the U.S. dollar crashes, and that's always been the plan.
Well, what comes next, Bix? What would you say to folks that are listening that have been acquiring physical precious metals and are absolutely at their wits' end? Because we do know that the dollar cannot and will not go on forever. The average life expectancy of a fiat currency is roughly 40 years. We're just beyond 40 years here with the US dollar. Its days are numbered. So people do understand that. But what would you tell people who are really sick to their stomachs because they feel like they've lost their shirts here on precious metals?
Well, a few things. One, I'd say, you look back the run up to 50. I was more afraid of silver as it ran up to 50 than I am now. It was obvious to me that run up was artificial. They were setting the programs to run it from $25 in January to $50, at the end of, what was it, April or May. That was scary because it meant either they had lost control of the price or an operation was in effect. And it obviously, in hindsight, it was an operation. So now I'm not too afraid. You just sit here and you wait and you wait and you wait and know that it isn't price. That price you see on the screen is not reality. If you can get your hands on physical and you have it in your pocket and nobody else holds it for you, that's exactly where you want to be. And this is the pain of it all, is writing it all out. You weren't gonna, if it goes up to $40, you're not gonna sell it. You can still hang on to it because they're still manipulating it. There will be a time to sell, and that time to sell is when the manipulation ends. And you'll know it ends because 100 billion ounces won't trade every year. It'll go to more like 50 million ounces that'll trade hands every year because no one's willing to give it up. So yeah, just hang tight. And I know it's hard. Obviously, I've been going through it for 15 years, and it's not fun when they slam it, and it looks like there's no end in sight. But if you stay out of the system, you keep your metal, you go about your business, and you just wait them out, in the end, you will find that that's pretty much the only thing that will survive a global meltdown of the electronic assets.
Yeah, and the lower they push these prices, the more exponential the demand must be for physical, to the degree that even if the numbers of people wanting precious metals don't grow because we live in a dumbed-down society with a dumbed-down public, those of us who do know, these same silver bugs who have been talking about this for the last 5, 10, 15 years, these people are going to continue to make their same purchases but get more metal for their money, and that's going to be an exponential curve on the demand for the physical. I mean, I don't see how the supply is going to be able to hold up and fill the demand as prices now get back to where they were 4, 5, 6 years ago.
It's true, but remember, the physical movement of metal, people buying metal, that has no effect on price. It has zero effect. You can buy
That's right.
100 million ounces today, and the price won't change. It would probably go down because they don't like people buying physical.
No, you're right. I'm just talking about the physical asset. It's going to become hard to get. If they run the price back down to $5, do you think I will not continue to make my same purchases and get 4 or 5 times as much silver as I was getting a year ago? Of course I will.
Yeah, but you're in the know, shall we say. You've been through the ups and downs and you know what's happening and why. The majority of the public is not in the know. And the majority of the public is not in silver. When they do get in, when the revelations that, it's been rigged for, who knows, over 100 years now, when that revelation comes out, the majority of the public will be into silver, will be looking to get physical silver in their hands, and those holding it will not be willing to get rid of it at almost any U.S. dollar price.
Right, but let's circle back though, and I know that most people in this country aren't in precious metals, but again, look at the Shanghai Exchange. Look at the metals being gutted, the physical metals being stripped from the Shanghai Exchange. We've seen 90+% of the physical silver drained. And I think that is a statistic and a reality we need to keep revisiting, because even though people are asleep in this country, people all over the world, especially in Asia, are wide awake.
Yep. And where did they get that metal to put in the warehouse in the beginning? They got it out of London. So we are witnessing the movement of physical metal. It used to be all the physical metal went to London to be traded with the bad guys. Now it's all coming out of London and going to other places in the world. Shanghai obviously is going to be a gigantic hub. And at some point, the Shanghai Exchange will be where price is set, because right now there is no physical exchange of gold or silver other than the Shanghai Gold Exchange that trades physical gold for money. Everything else is futures options. The LBMA has nothing to do with physical anymore, really. It's just a bunch of bankers, playing with themselves and setting the price wherever they want it. So keep an eye on Shanghai when they open up the Shanghai Silver Exchange, which there's rumors of already. That'll be the new place to price gold and silver on those exchanges.
All right. Well, I just want to summarize and come back a little bit full circle and talk about this good guys thing. Chris Dwayne, Andy Hoffman, a lot of the guys that I talk to on a regular basis don't believe there's any white knights coming to save us. But you were saying for a long time that Alan Greenspan was one of the good guys, was a true believer in gold. Now here he is coming out saying all of these things that so many people are finding shocking, when he was really the head figure of the central banking fiat Ponzi scheme for so long. And I've called him the world's most famous central banker, and I'd stick by that. I think he is. So credit where credit is due. Let me just ask you this, though. From my geopolitical viewpoint, about the only good guy I can point to out there, and people are going to probably hate me for saying it, but I'd say Vladimir Putin is one of the only people on planet Earth that is holding this Western unchecked maniacal power in check. What's your take on that?
I think Putin should be a U.S. president. The way he's talking, he's starting to sound more and more like Ron Paul. His latest speech, I was going to put up for my subscribers, is all about returning to national pride and free markets, and we want to be everybody's friend and trade with people, but don't mess with us, because we'll take you down, because we have the global power now of all our military can take on any country in the world. That's what the United States should be saying. We go back to what Ron Paul was saying. We want to be everybody's friend. We're going to take all our troops and bring them home. We want to trade with people, and we want to be good neighbors, and we'll be part of this global, experience. But we're not going to have these bad guys running it. That's what Putin's saying. Putin should run for president of the United States, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah, I think it's becoming very evident to anybody with a pulse that Vladimir Putin is the real McCoy, to the extent that the man can speak off the cuff. The man does not need a teleprompter. The man does not need a panel of advisors telling him what to say and what to think. The man seems to be standing up for his sovereign nation, and that's the point. We don't see anybody in our country in a position of leadership standing up for our sovereign nation, standing up for your interests, my interests, the interests of my children. We don't see anybody, maybe with the exception of Ron Paul and few others, we see very few people in positions of power in the United States standing up for the United States. And I think at the end of the day, Bix, that's the key to this whole conversation. We all want somebody to stand up for the sovereignty of our nation, to stand up against the United Nations, to stand up against Agenda 21, to stand up against the Rothschild banking power, to stand up for our liberty and for our rights, and to stand up for our future. And I think that is the message of sound money. That's the message you and I have been trying to share for so long. Precious metals in physical form in your possession is a form of personal financial sovereignty, free of banker tyranny. And I think at the end of the day, that's the best way to summarize this conversation, right?
I agree 100%. And it's not necessarily right now that we need someone to stand up for us. We're going to need to stand up for ourselves when the next banking crash hits, because that's the moment. That's our last chance to take our country back. If we don't kick the bankers out finally when this next crash comes, and we turn to our government and say, oh, help us, bail us out and all that, then you can pretty much kiss our country goodbye. If we stand up and say, no more, we've had enough, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone, part to almost every congressman out there, every bankster out there, then we can take our country back. And I think we will. I think there's enough information out there. And right now we're just waiting on that crash, and it could come any day, literally.
Well, amen to that. We do need to stand up for ourselves. And I want to thank Bix Weir, one of our longtime guests and a great friend to SGT Report. Bix, tell people about your website and tell people about your newsletter, will you?
Sure, it's roadtoruta.com. You can sign up for free email blasts. I put out about 2 or 3 every week. And then if you want to get more in depth, there's a paid subscriber section. And you can find out all about this crazy stuff I'm talking about with Alan Greenspan on that site.
Yeah, there's a plethora of information that will keep people busy for literally dozens and dozens of hours on Bix's roadtoruta.com website. Bix, thank you so much for your time. I certainly do appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Sean.
And guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen. And I also want to thank SD Bullion, our new premier sponsor at SGT Report. A great bunch of guys. I just made a recent purchase from them last week, and it's only $7.77 to have it shipped to your house, no matter what size your order is. So great guys, affordable prices. My thanks to SD Bullion for stepping up to support us. And guys, thanks for visiting us over at sgtreport.com. Have a terrific week.